Hi everybody. We are working with perfect squares and square roots. You might have seen this sign before. The square root of a number is the number that when multiplied by itself gives the original number. And we have the radical sign here, and that shows us to take the square root. This is part of chapter 10, but we're going to squeeze it in with chapter 9 as we get close to the end of the quarter. So perfect squares have square roots that are whole numbers. Here's some examples. You'll notice I have a frog theme going on. So the first one is the square root of 9. Do you know a number when you times it by itself, it gives you 9? Of course. The square root of 9 is 3. Now, since this is a positive 9, or positive, there's no negative out in front, we're just going to say it's 3. What about this one, the square root of 25? Do you know what number when you times itself gives you 25? Of course, 5. What about the square root of 144? It's 12. What about the square root of 100? Right, it's 10. What about the square root of 16? It's 4. Very good. If you get time tonight, what I'd like you to do is Google the perfect squares and square roots. See if you can come up with a list of a whole bunch of them. I will give you one tomorrow, but if you can find one on your own, that would be great. So find the square root of each number. Let's look at this one here. 169. Now that one's tough. And also, you can find the square root button on your calculator if you have one. But the correct answer here is 13. 9, we already went over, was 3. 36, you guys have an idea for 36? 6. What about for 100? We talked about that one. It was 10. Very good. Okay, a few more. The square root of 25 over the square root of 36. By rules, you can go ahead and take the square root of 25 over the square root of 36, and we get 5 over 6. You can do that. That's legal. What about the square root of 4 over 49? Well, the square root of 4 we know is 2, and the square root of 49 we know is 7. Look at this ugly toad here. Does anybody know the square root of 121? It's 11. And 400? It's 20. Okay, so there's our perfect squares. Well, now what about the not so perfect squares? For example, 175. How do we find the square root of that? On your exam, your quarter 4 exam, which is not too far away, you're going to be asked to estimate that. And what you can do here is you can find a perfect square that goes into 175. So what are some perfect squares that go into 175? Well, what about 25? And it's kind of like a prime factorization. So 25 times what gives us 175? Well, 4 25s make 100, and plus 3 more. Here we go. So then we have 5 square roots of 7. And that would be our simplified version, which is okay. I don't know what's going on with my pen here. It's weird. Okay. So that's how you would do that. You would find a perfect square that goes into 175. So that list of perfect squares, if you could find that, that would be very helpful. What about 90? Is there a perfect square that goes into 90? Yeah, what about 9? 9 and what? 10. Are there any perfect squares that go into 10? Well, 5's not a perfect square, nor is 2, so we have to leave it. This is kind of like a prime factorization tree. Do you guys remember that? So it would be 3 square roots of 10. What about the square root of 6? Is there a perfect square that goes into the square root of 6? Well, 3 is not 1, nor is 2, so we better just leave it as the square root of 6. It can't be simplified. Let's look at 580. What would be a perfect square that goes into this? Well, I'm going to try 4. And I'm going to use my Calci toy. 580 divided by 4 gives me 145. Now, is there a perfect square that goes into 145? Let's see, 4, 9, anything like that? I couldn't find one, so I believe it's 2 and 145. What about 12? 2 and the square roots of 145, I'm sorry. What about 12? What's a perfect square that goes into 12? Well, 4, 3, so we have 2 square roots of 3. If it'd make it easier, I'll go ahead and put a link to the perfect squares on the web page for you, and you can look at those instead of trying to Google it yourself. You might be able to find a better list of perfect squares if you'd like. But that's all we have to do today. There is, like I said, there is a square root button on your calculator that will give you a decimal version, and that way you could also estimate these as well. And we'll go over that tomorrow. So have a great evening, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.